Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum, boys and girls. Welcome once again to the life-changing, mind-altering, perspective-having, and perspective-giving podcast that opens your mind and opens your heart, inshallah, to the world around you, to new ideas, to new concepts, where we answer your questions about Islam and today's hot topics. And because, Islam plugs into those. A lot of people say Islam isn't compatible with Western culture, but I think this is 65 here, but after 65 episodes, we've shown that Islam does and is compatible with Western culture. And I've been talking for a full-on minute because I have the handy-dandy clock in my corner. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, the hardest-working imam that I know, Imam Azhar.
Assalamu alaikum. Greetings of peace to our listeners here tonight on Facebook Live and to those who are going to be tuning in at a later time. We welcome you back to Raw Islam with Imam Azhar and Brother Carl. We call him Brother Carl today. He'll be Father Carl tomorrow. He'll be Grandpa Carl the day after.
No.
In all due respect, it is part of our culture. In some things in culture are very good, in my opinion, where we respect those who bring to the table goodness, those who are older than us in age, and we take their words of wisdom and advice seriously. So that being said, welcome once again. We are here tonight, as Carl said, to create discussion, to confront the norm, to address contemporary matters, and to acknowledge and identify what are the important things that we need to be focusing on here and now. Brother Carl, a thought came to mind I just want to share with you. We haven't spoken about this, and this is maybe going to put you on the spot, but I was in Florida 2 weeks ago for literally 17 hours. And when I landed in Florida, the weather here was so-so. It was fine. We entered Florida at 93 degrees on a Saturday afternoon. It was nice and hot. And I was reminded how much I missed the humidity. Being here in Texas, I was just, in tears, in tears of pain, actually, of being reminded of humidity. But on the way back, the next morning, we were going to be flying into Dallas, and the temperature was supposed to be 44 degrees. So going from a 93 to 44 is more than a half cut. And when I entered the plane, Carl, and I know we have another topic to discuss tonight, but I just want to throw this out to our listeners because it taught me something. And really, it opened my mind to something that I felt was not something to even consider till that moment. So I walk on the plane. And of course, when you walk on the plane, Carl, first, you're greeted by the air hostess and hostesses, and then you bank right, because if you bank left, you're going into the cockpit. And you don't want to go in the cockpit, especially as a Muslim, because they may assume something else. So you bank right, and you have to pass first class first to get to economy class. And while I was waiting in the long line of travelers getting to their seats and stowing away their luggage, there were two individuals talking in first class. Now, I've had the opportunity to sit in first class a few times, and I know some people just like talking. They'll start talking and they'll talk loud enough that people around them can hear, and they could talk about their life experiences and so on and so forth. That is why I love bringing my headphones, because once I put on the noise cancellation, I can also cancel out the nonsense that I'm not interested in listening in. Long story short, so one says to the other, laughing, that we're going to be landing in a climate that is so much more colder than what we're leaving from. And he was saying, and they say global warming is a true thing, and they're laughing. And I stopped for a moment and started thinking that, many people don't even understand basic terminologies, and they don't understand the concept that's trying to be educated through them. So correct me if I'm wrong, Carl. Global warming, does that mean that the world is just going to burn to death? Or does that mean that there is going to be extreme fluctuation in temperatures from what is the norm and an introduction of certain climate conditions that were not found in that area for the last few decades?
So I will start by saying salam to Angela, Sister Angela. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your comment on our Facebook page. And I will follow that with... yeah, I've actually heard a lot that we shouldn't be using the phrase global warming, that we should actually just specifically start using climate change. Mm-hmm. Because, and I mean, I've heard that, you know, that, oh, it's 105 degrees with 6,000% humidity. Mm-hmm. You know, that global warming, ha ha ha, or especially in the winter. You know, it'll get down to where it's you know, negative or zero, and people are like, yeah, feel that global warming now, don't you? And it is global warming, but again, we should start calling it climate change, because while it may be cold, maybe it isn't as cold as it used to be, and that's a problem. Maybe it's colder than it used to be, and maybe it's hotter than it used to be, and that's a problem. So it's climate change. Mm-hmm. I know my personal experience. I have a cousin that lives south of where you used to live. Mm-hmm. I think she said it was like a half an hour, and red tide was a thing. Mm-hmm. And apparently all these fish wash up on the shore dead. Mm-hmm. And she said normally it lasts, you know, a week, 3 days, 4 days. Apparently this year the red tide went for months and mm-hmm. months and months and months. And that was really abnormal, and that has really never happened before. And so that's one of those things that this is climate change. This is real. Seawater is rising. You know, eventually Florida is just not going to exist anymore, because it's like, I know this is a really bad example, but so I have my glass, right? Uh-huh. And I put my ice cubes in it. And if I fill the glass to the top and then try to fill it with ice, uh-huh. the water would come over and it would spill everywhere. And it's the same concept, is that the polar ice caps are melting, making more water, and then they're breaking apart. And so now the water not only is there more water, but the large natural ice cubes are making the water go up even higher. Uh-huh. So it's climate change is real, man.
But see, Carl, that's exactly where the problem stems from, is when we don't understand what is causing all of this. When temperatures are dipping so fast and temperatures are rising to numbers that we've never been accustomed to seeing, global warming in essence means that due to our continuous pollution of the atmosphere, we are causing the temperatures to rise, and those temperatures that rise also make it possible for temperatures to dip. Those extreme measures are happening. But that got me thinking for the entire 2.5 hour flight, that how can someone be so educated but so ignorant? And I want to stem off of this, and I came to a conclusion that if we don't even identify and educate each other on the basic things, I'm talking basic things that you feel every human being should know, we're going to face a catastrophe. So you're saying, let's not talk about global warming, let's call it climate change, and maybe people will start picking up on the severity of it, like the hurricane Michael that just hit and slammed Florida. I've never seen or experienced anything of that magnitude. I've been in hurricanes, but that is totally the next level. And there's a hurricane that was off the west coast of Mexico yesterday. I don't know if it's hit thus far. It became a Category 5. These are going to become the norms. Category 5 tornadoes, Cat 5 tornadoes, hurricanes, what you call it, the tsunamis, which will result through earthquakes, as we had the one in Indonesia. It's just chaos. And so we are living really in bubbles, and we can't understand the basic things. And when I talk about basic things, Carl, let me just flat out say it. Many people feel that water is in abundance, right? There's so much water. The earth is 77% or something of water, and the rest is land. So there's so much water to go around. We shouldn't worry about it. Like we could waste water for the rest of our lives and there'll still be more water.
It's salt water.
It's salt water. Exactly. The water that's usable, that we can use to consume, to use in our food, to make our beverages, to take a shower, to cook with, is not even 2% of the water on this earth. That's why a lot of major cities are constantly recycling the water that you use for brushing your teeth and down this drain, or you flush in the toilet after using the bathroom, or that you use in the shower. It goes into a machine, it gets cleaned up, and it comes back to your pipe, if not within a few weeks, in a few months. It's part of the cycle. So the fact that people don't even understand this basic point is apparent when you see people wasting water. We were in a 5K run just this weekend, and they were handing out bottles to the people who were running, jogging, or walking. And I saw some people, they took a bottle, they twisted open the cap, they drank a sip or two, and then they turned it upside down and let it just go on the tarmac, like on the road. And it's like, if they were to understand how valuable of a resource drinkable water is in our world right now, we wouldn't see people wasting. If people understood that global warming and climate change is a real thing, they would not be abusing the atmosphere as we are accustomed to doing it right now. So what we're seeing right now isn't, I don't want to call it an all-out, abuse of society and our atmosphere. It's ignorance that's leading up to people feeling that they could do whatever they want to do and nothing's going to happen. No, cause and effect, right? There's an action and there's a reaction to that. So to our listeners tonight, we might be talking about and pitching to you some topics that we may be discussing on this show. The choice is yours, and we want your feedback, as you have given us your feedback 2 weeks ago on a poll, and we'll spend the next 10 minutes to talk about that. But believe me, we need to start talking and educating our friends, our families, and our neighbors on basic things. Understand that when you take a paint can and you're not going to use that paint anymore and you just drain it by the sewer system on the side of the road, it's causing a problem. When you take batteries and you leave them out in the heat, or you put them in a garbage can and you think it's going to just go into a land waste, no, you're causing problems to society. That's why I'm grateful when I grew up in Canada, going to school in the 80s, one of our field trips were to go to a recycling plant and learn why paper needs to be recycled, why plastic bottles and glass bottles need to be recycled, because they cannot reacclimate in the earth. They have to be processed differently. And that was in the 80s. And people today in parts of America don't understand the concept of recycling. That goes down to the lack of education on what we consider the basics and everyone should know. But Carl, we move forward. Again, our interactions with people will always teach us something. But our listeners, our dedicated listeners, and those who interact with us on a weekly basis told us they want to speak about something. Carl, what was that?
Okay, while I get ready to throw that up on the screen here, I do actually... What happened? Oh, here, that's why. Because I'm trying something new tonight on how we present the poll. So I really hope that this works. We'll see in a minute. But before I throw that up there, again, welcome to all our viewers. And subhanAllah, I just got an alert on my phone as you were talking 4 minutes ago. This says breaking news. Oops, hold on, it locked. Category 3 Hurricane Willa has just made landfall in west central Mexico. So there we go. There's the answer to your question that you were stating about that. Now, as Imam Azhar said, if you go to Twitter, the Twitter, and you look for us, Venn Network, at Venn Network. That's with 3 N's, VENNNETWORK. Every Monday, we will be posting a poll about what we will be talking about this episode. So if you want to take part in this and you want to tell us what we should talk about, follow us on Twitter. And when we post it on Monday afternoons, take part in it. So here is this one, and we've missed a couple of episodes, but from October 8th, here's the poll that you guys voted in. The options were, is voting halal? I want to trick or treat. Climate change, 12 years left. And candy corn, what is it really? And again, you guys voted. I was very sad to see that you guys don't want to talk about candy corn because I love candy corn. But the winner for tonight's topic is voting halal. So with that, we will turn this back over to Imam Azhar, because voting is very important, and we have November 6th is coming right around the corner, and I'm encouraging everybody to vote their conscience. But as a Muslim living in the United States, as a citizen, as a registered voter, is it halal for me to go to the polls and cast my vote, or is that bid'ah?
Bid'ah means innovation. Just for our non-Muslim listeners, a term that's thrown around a lot in the ultra-conservative Muslim communities when they feel that something is not does not agree with their whims and fancies. And I'll say it straight up. It's amazing that after so many years of trial and error, acknowledging the repercussions of not engaging in a process that you have volunteered to exercise your right in doing so, we still have a percentage of the Muslim community in the West that constantly takes up these opportunities when it's the midterm elections or it's the national elections, if it's the presidential elections, to give their long and boring fatwas as to what their thoughts are when it comes to engaging in the West. Now, I don't want to bore our listeners tonight, but the question is a very simple one. Is it permissible for a Muslim living in a non-Muslim country to vote for someone in office? I know for you all, it's like you're going to be scratching your heads like, what is this? But yes, the struggle is real, even within the Muslim community. And actually, not just the Muslim community. There are some other communities of different religions or thought processes where they feel that you don't engage politically and you don't engage in other things. And again, with all due respect to beliefs that are rooted in something that is found within the religion, we respect those territories, and we don't have the slightest bit of inclination towards mocking, jeering, or making fun of those practices. We respect them. But in Islam, this is not something of regards to respecting an ideology, or is it in regards to turning us away from what is considered the norm in Islam. Rather, this mindset that voting is not permissible is stemmed in three things, and we're going to talk about those three things. But none of them are rooted in anything sound and stable within the religion. What is number one? Number one, you're living in a non-Muslim land, hence you don't have the right to exercise your opinion for non-Muslim people. This in itself is so problematic, and especially for our Muslim listeners tonight, it's imperative that we understand these 3 points and we use them as a rebuttal to those who feel that they have some stability. Because when they write these long fatwas, they use Darul Kufr, Darul Harb, which means the land of the infidels, the land of war. They talk about how the people that you're electing or selecting, you're becoming the process of bringing non-Islamic mindsets to power. So there's just so much that they throw out there, and especially Arabic terminologies that even make someone who felt that they understand the matter question their stance. So number one, they're saying that can a Muslim living in a non-Muslim world select someone who's a non-Muslim? There is no such thing in the Islamic text where we can call the world a non-Muslim world. In Islam, we believe that the entire earth belongs to God, and we believe every human being is a creation of God, and that our societies are supposed to be built wherein we all live together. The Quran says that He made us into tribes and nations so that we could get to know each other. Getting to know each other didn't mean getting to know whose wall is bigger than the others or whose processes of trespassing is more severe and pain inflicting than the others. No. Getting to know each other meant to find a way to live harmoniously while upholding your values and your faith without feeling the need to compromise it. When we live in America, we abide by a constitution and we pledge to contribute towards this society which we call our home. So for someone to say that we're residing in a non-Muslim country in itself is a problematic statement, because this isn't a non-Muslim country and this isn't a Muslim country. This is what we call home. And home is always work in process. It's never going to be perfect, but we're never going to abandon our home and say, you know what? I don't like my kids tonight, so I'm going to go sleep at the neighbor's house. Well, guess what? If you don't like your kids, the dogs from the next door neighbor is going to bite you when you're sleeping. So don't think that it's as simply done as it is said. This is our home, and we citizens who are citizens of this country have a constitutional, not just right, but a civic duty to vote for those who are running in office that they feel can serve the betterment of the masses. There is nowhere written that you have to find a Muslim to serve the community, and that makes it justified for the Muslims to vote. The fact, and that's point number 2, the fact that Muslims have never engaged civically until today, until now, until recently, in itself shows that we never accepted this country to be our home. Every other community that's considered a minority, from the Jewish community, the Sikh community, the Hindu community, the Buddhist community, the Baha'i community, the LGBTQ community, whatever community you want to call it, everyone felt that in order for us to have a seat on the table of the discussion, we need to be part of the discussion, we need to make our way into the discussion. The Muslims, for some reason, felt they never had to, and that is why, till now, we're stuck in this dilemma with such instability in our country right now, and we think we have, and we do have, a blueprint for assisting the society to bring forth stability, but we're not going to be able to propagate that message effectively because we're not living it. We're not living it, and we're not making it seem viable for others to see it in action. So we're very far behind. You are not living in a non-Muslim country again. You're living at home. That's the point number 1. And living at home, you have a duty to vote. And so that dispels the first. Number 2, it doesn't matter who the person is, doesn't matter what they eat, doesn't matter what they do, but what they do when they serve on a public platform is what you should be vetting and then giving your vote accordingly. What they do behind closed doors, who they worship, how they live, is none of anyone's business, and that's the teachings of Islam. If a person committed adultery in Islam behind closed doors, that's no one's business. No one needs to instigate, interrogate, investigate, none of your business. But when that of adultery comes to an open society, out in the open, in a shameless manner, where at least 4 people are witnessing the action in progress, then that is justification for the Islamic law. So even in Islam, we're taught not to spy, not to investigate people, what doesn't matter to you. So our country, our home, is right now very unstable, and it's imperative that we vote. It was a long process reminding people and setting forth the case that it's imperative that you register to vote. That time is gone. Early voting has started, and people are going to vote for what type of world they want to see. And I'm not going to be here to tell you to vote blue or red or vote for a certain individual or not, but I'm going to tell you one thing. If you believe there's someone who's upholding the values or who's going to bring forth those values or that are going to challenge what we consider the norms of divisiveness and racism and prejudice and hatred, then you better go vote for them. Not November 6th. Remember, voting ends November 5th. Let me tell you this. Stick this in your head. Voting ends November 5th, which means November 6th is no longer an option. What I mean by that is where there's early voting from now till the end of October, I think, or till like the 1st or 2nd of November, that's your block. November 6th is no one's option right now. We're going to go do it now, and we're not going to have any excuse in doing it now. So again, is voting permissible in a non-Muslim world? We talked about that. Who you're voting for is none of your business in regards to how they live, what they practice, what they believe. What's your responsibility is what they're going to bring to the table and what they're going to keep on the table. And the last point, Carl, before I hand it back for questions or suggestions or thoughts from our listeners, is this terminology in Islam, which is called Darul Islam, Darul Harb, Darul Aman, Darul Kufr. Are you living in a world of Islam, a world of the infidels, a world of peace, or a world of war? Number one, our world right now, meaning our country, our nation, is not Darul Islam. It's not a world or a society that's run by Islamic law, and it's not comprised of all Muslims. So let's throw that off the table. It's not also Darul Harb, a land where there is active warfare, where you have to protect yourself. So we're going to throw that off the table also. It's not also Darul Kufr. The infidel word that's translated as infidel, kufr is not a people. Kufr is an action. It's where you outright reject something even though it may be viable, it may be helpful, but because you hate where it's coming from and you hate who's bringing it forward and you hate what it's talking about and you hate the sources behind bringing it to the table, you outright reject it, deny it, and then you work against it, is the act of kufr, which the kafir is translated as the infidel. All Americans who are not Muslims are not infidels. Anyone in the world who's not a Muslim is not an infidel by default. They're human beings. Islam came to humanity, Quran came to humanity, and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, just like Jesus and Moses, peace be upon both of them, before him, they propagated a message to humanity. So for any Muslim to use that as a reason that Muslims should not go and vote because they're in Darul Kufr, they're in the land of infidels, is totally baseless, and they themselves need to learn their religion first. Point is, we are in Darul Aman. We are in the land of peace. But that peace is not something that is there by default. It came there with struggle, and it will only stay there through struggle. That's why I'll end by saying this. The struggle is real. The time is now. The people have registered. They better go and vote. And don't assume that if I don't go vote, it's not going to make a difference. There are people I know who are in politics today and doing an amazing job for their communities and beyond. They got that position because of 50 votes, 55 votes. So don't think one vote doesn't matter. One vote matters a lot. Carl?
So the 2 points that I will make that you touched on was, get out and vote. And just because it's, I personally don't normally vote in midterm elections, but given what's on the 24-hour news cycle, I'm going this year, and I am going November 6th. I'm not doing early voting, sorry. But I am going, and much like you, I'm not telling anybody to vote green don't vote green, don't vote red, don't vote blue, don't vote any of the primary colors, vote your heart. And because one of the things that I've heard over the years, and I repeat all the time is if you don't use your voice to talk and share your thoughts and feelings, somebody else is going to share those thoughts and feelings for you, and they may not match yours. So it's important to get out there. And the other thing was, and it really didn't click until you said it, is there is a record number of Muslims running this year, but they really are all second and third generation, aren't they? There's no first generation. They're all like the kids or the grandkids thereof. Right. Yeah. I didn't think about it until you said it, and I was like, yeah. And because they've been here, they've grown up here, this is their environment, and they're using their voice to speak for themselves, because somebody else may speak up and they may not, share the same view. But the other point I wanted to add before I pass it back to you for your closing remarks is just simply for the 17% of you that did vote, candy corn is absolutely amazing, especially if you can find it halal. And if somebody gives you halal candy corn and you don't want it, feel free to email us at this email address right here, and you can send it right to me and I'll take care of it, because candy corn is absolutely amazing. And fight me on it if you disagree. Closing remarks, sir?
Closing remarks. Thank you for that. I don't know what candy corn is, so I was scared that would even be an option on the table, and I have to go to Encyclopedia Britannica and research how in the 1800s candy corn was formed. But I don't need to do that right now, but I'll wait for you to get a package from one of our listeners, and I'll smell it over the computer and see if it's something that I'm interested in. But closing tonight, to our listeners, we thank you for your patience. We thank you for engaging with us. We thank you for listening and hopefully sharing the discussion. We want to start discussions. We want you to continue those discussions. We want people to know that if they have any questions or concerns, they could email us at the email right here on the bottom, and they can ask us and we will respond, inshallah. But closing, there's an analogy that's used in times of desperation. Do it as if your life depends on it. Our lives depend on it. Doesn't matter if you're Caucasian, doesn't matter if you're African, doesn't matter if you're third generation, doesn't matter if you're a migrant here. Our lives depend on it. And there is no solid position through our religious texts that would prevent someone from going out and engaging in society, fulfilling their civic duty, especially when we're so far behind that we haven't produced or nurtured a generation that could have stood up like those did in Michigan and in Tampa and other places across the country and Minnesota, that actually made their voices heard, that sold their story to the people, and that their authenticity was valid enough that people did go to the polls and vote for them. We're not there yet as a Muslim society, so don't be another hindrance in the road preventing us from getting there. Go vote. Your life depends on it. If you don't believe me, 2 years from now, we'll be crying, but it'll be too late by then.
And on that upbeat note, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of Raw Islam. This is our 65th episode. You can find all 65 episodes over at thevennetwork.org. It's actually vennetwork.org, not the, and I don't know why I said the. So head over to vennetwork.org, where you can find all the podcasts on the network over there. We're looking at adding a couple more here soon, so we're growing, and they're all there to be found. And we encourage you to go over there, like, check out, comment, share, whatever you need to do. We want to thank everybody that tuned in and watched us this evening. We want to thank Sister Angela for her comments. For those of you that liked this episode, thank you very much. Make sure you share it on your timeline. And also, while you're over at vennetwork.org, make sure you check out our little swag that we offer. You can get your own copy, or your own t-shirt, your own sweatshirt, your own long sleeve t-shirt for our hijabi sisters. And the proceeds go to help the network. They go to help support the hosts and everything else. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode. I want to thank everybody one more time. And until next week, we will say, Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.